From the KTN News Center this Sunday, the 11th day of February 2018. Many thanks for joining us on the broadcast. This is Kenya's only Sunday morning political show. We are here for the next 2 hours or so to try and discuss and debate some of the biggest political and governance issues that we have been reporting on or seeing throughout the week in the country. And let me introduce my guests this morning. I have with me political strategist Mutinda Kavemba. I have with me communication expert Hesbon Owila, lawyer Stephen Anditi, and political risk analyst Dismas Mokua. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, let's get right into it. In the political pages, of course, taking a look what are some of the biggest stories in the daily newspapers, in the Sunday papers this morning. Let's start with the Sunday Nation and their splash. Is of course a continuation of what has been happening in the aftermath of that NASA swearing in of Raila Odinga as the people's president. Revealed a report, according to the Sunday Nation, a special police squad that is plotting more arrests of anybody, the leaders, political leaders, who were involved in one way or the other in that oathing by the opposition National Super Alliance. It is said to be a secretive elite unit of experienced officers assembled for that operation. And they, according to the Sunday Nation, the strategy is to obtain search warrants and then raid the homes of targeted leaders, Matiang'i and Boynet, warning that more arrests are on the way. Dismas, what is the direction here?
Well, you know, it cannot be a secretive police unit to arrest NASA politicians if it's already in the media. I think this is part of the propaganda to intimidate a number of NASA MPs who may want to come out in a very bold manner and make statements. Right. And really, there's nothing wrong if the police have got any reason to believe that somebody has engaged in a crime, NASA or Jubilee, then they should be given the leeway to make an arrest, provided it's anchored in the rule of law and order. So any MP, Jubilee, NASA, any governor, MC, any politician who has broken the law needs to be arraigned, needs to be arrested, but in a manner which is consistent with civility.
Right.
Like, for instance, if they're going to arrest, say, Miguna, there's no reason as to why they should go as if they're going to arrest a terrorist, you know, break into his house using explosive materials. It needs to be in a structured manner. But more important is that if they've gone to maybe they're now in the police custody, and the lawyers have gone to the courts and the courts have given particular orders, then those orders must be obeyed. And it's important at this stage to give the Chief Justice a pat on the back when he reminded all Kenyans that court orders are not suggestions. Court orders are not suggestions, they are court orders, and they must be obeyed. And if you've got issues with the court orders, you go back to the same court so that you can appeal that, you address your feelings.
All right. Yeah. Stephen, speaking from the legal perspective, according to the Sunday Nation, the strategy is to obtain search warrants and raid homes of targeted leaders. From what we understand from the Miguna case, is that that was not the case, and he was held incommunicado for 5 days. Is this a change of tack by the state?
Definitely a very worrying trend, what you are seeing. And even in instances where the state does get the search warrants, the way the search warrants are being issued by the magistrates, it's a very worrying trend. We need to put on the spot the magistrates who are issuing these warrants. In most cases, they even do not want to identify themselves. A search warrant will be issued. The manner in which the police officers go about searching the premises.
Right.
Very, very archaic way of doing stuff. We need, and I've had Dismas refer to the Chief Justice saying that he has really set the tone, I hope, administratively. And also, we are also urging the Law Society of Kenya to take more note of what is happening in our country. We cannot have magistrates issuing search warrants in the dead of night.
All right.
Yes.
We'll talk about the LSK in a short while and what their plans are. Hesbon, welcome back. What do you think of this story?
Well, I think we just need to apportion credit and blame where it is due. You cannot blame the magistrates for issuing warrants of arrest if the manner in which individuals are arrested is not within the confines of the law. So I've seen enough people attack magistrates for issuing warrants of arrest, and I don't think it is in order because unless you've seen the warrant of arrest, you cannot blame a magistrate for issuing it if the people who carry the arrest carry it in a way that is not within the law. And then I think secondly, from what we are seeing, it seems like the government is cracking down on criminals, and it is only important that it is clear that the public gets to understand, what have they done, why are they being arrested. Some of these things that they're being arrested for, I don't think they can even pass the threshold in a court of law. They cannot, the evidence is not substantive enough. But just like we are seeing everything propagated in the media, there is something that the government is trying to communicate, that the government has the machinery to crack down on any illegal activity. And I think that is the signal that they are sending.
Is it more of the government trying to flex its muscles?
Flex its muscles, and I'm hesitant to say intimidate because they have the monopoly to exercise force. But I think they're moving towards that threshold where whatever they are doing is now to intimidate and scare.
Mutinda, arrests, more arrests coming.
I think that the most commendable thing about that particular thing is that they are now going out of their way to get the warrants before they
All right.
investigate.
All right, Mutinda, let me just cut you short a bit as we try to sort out your audio. Seems to be having some technical hitches. And we'll come back to you. But still on the same issue, on page 4 of the Sunday Standard, lawyers to boycott courts for 1 week. The Law Society of Kenya will boycott courts for a week starting tomorrow, reportedly, to protest violations of rights and disobedience of court orders by the state and public officers. That is according to LSK President Isaac Okero, who announced they shall embark on that nationwide yellow ribbon campaign from next week by keeping off courts to protest the violation of the law. Let me come back to you, Hasbon. Do you see this as the way to go by the LSK?
Yeah, I think it's the way to go. When some of these things are happening to individuals and we are seeing them happening, people being arrested, violation of court orders, it is only a matter of time, and they will actually affect many of us. So it is good that the Law Society of Kenya is coming in to put pressure, because the most important thing, and I think both sides of the political divide have flouted this, is the respect of the rule of law. And it is only prudent that different organizations that are stakeholders, different organizations that now represent the main interest of the public, come in to address some of these things. And I think it's credit to the Law Society of Kenya. If they can ensure that we have sanity within our corridors of justice, it will be a good thing.
Bwana Wakili, do you have the wherewithal or the unity of purpose to do this and follow through?
I would certainly hope that there is that unity of purpose. However, we must not forget that we have had a very docile law society in the past 2 years. At this point, any action from them would be laudable because they have set the bar so low. When they propose such a thing, we might have to go through with it. However, when it comes to court boycotts, it's something that has been explored in other jurisdictions. In Pakistan, the lawyers went all out, boycotted court sessions when the Chief Justice Iftikhar Chowdhury was removed by President Musharraf. However, we have said that if it's going to be done, we need unity of purpose. We are getting the feeling that the council might not really be united on this issue. There are other members who are of the opinion that it ought not to happen. But at the same time, they are not putting forward suggestions as to how to address the issue of rule of law in this country. So at this point, perhaps we need to go through with it.
All right. Mutinda, Matiang'i, the Interior Secretary, and the Inspector General of Police promising or threatening more arrests of the NASA leaders, and then LSK saying they are going to boycott court for a week to protest what they call violations of rights and court orders by the states. What gives?
Like I was saying, I think the most important thing is to be keen on everyone playing by the rules. And the rules here, we mean the Constitution and the laws of the land. Because you see, it is now an open secret that there are people who vowed to bring down the duly constituted government of Uhuru and Ruto. And that by itself is not legal. And again, it would be naive to expect the government not to do anything But as they do whatever they are doing to ensure that everybody is doing whatever they are doing within the law, then they are also bound by the same law. That is what would be the most important thing for me, that no one is playing outside of the rules, so that if there is anybody who has broken the law or is against the Constitution, then they are dealt with in accordance with the Constitution and the law. The worrying trend is where it looks like everybody has decided for their own convenience to play outside the rules. That is what would not be in the interest of this country if we take that route. So for as long as everything is been, and that's why I started by saying that the good thing with the issue of what the police are talking about and their operations is that they are at least talking about first getting the search warrants from the magistrates before invading the homes of the suspects, which is commendable, because if they had done it otherwise, then they would be breaking the law. So that is what we would want to urge, that it doesn't matter what pressure you find yourself in, it is always important to play by the rules so that we don't give leeway or room for chaos or anarchy. Because if everyone decides to do what they think they should do, that is not even provided for in law, then that would be a breakdown of law and order, and it would not be in the interest of this country for us to go that route.
All right. Dismas, what do you think about this proposed move by LSK?
Well, number one, still it's very clear that you cannot enforce the Kenyan law by breaking the Kenyan law. So for the Inspector General of Police and everybody who works under his command, that must be given primary consideration. That if you're going to have to make an arrest, then you get a search warrant, then you get all the necessary documentation. And the policemen who are going to be executing that, they need to respect the Kenyan Constitution. They need to respect the rule of law and order. For instance, if what Miguna was saying is actually a statement of facts, that he was held incommunicado, he had no access to his counsel, he had no access to medical doctors, then that's unacceptable. He also indicated that he was made to stand for 24 hours. Really, that's torture. So the Inspector General must ensure that the people working under his command respect the rule of law and order. Now, coming back to LSK, LSK for the longest time, I think, has been a toothless bulldog. When we were growing up, when the chairman of LSK made a statement, everybody in Kenya stood up and paid attention, and the people listened. But in the recent past, you've had the LSK leadership taking partisan positions. If you are the LSK chair, you take a position influenced by Jubilee or NASA. And that's the reason why, even the decision they've taken that they're going to engage in a boycott, it's going to divide the society right in the middle. For people who are Jubilee-friendly, probably they'll ignore it. For people who are NASA-friendly, probably they're going to enforce it. And I think the buck doesn't stop only with the Law Society of Kenya. All professional bodies in Kenya must go to, or rather must join LSK in these boycotts. Because when you've got a country where court orders are not respected, then all the gains that we made as a nation, the 2010 Constitution, will come to zero. The Big Four agenda, as proposed by President Kenyatta, that is going to be his legacy vision, is going to come to zero. Because when people want to do business in Kenya, they'll be entering into commercial contracts. And if they know that you enter into a commercial contract, and if there's a dispute, you go to court, you get orders, nobody respects those orders, then the brand Kenya will begin to suffer. And at some stage, will start being compared with countries like North Korea or Ethiopia, countries that do not respect the rule of law and order. So the Law Society of Kenya must up their game, and all other bodies. One would expect engineers, architects, communication consultants like Professor William, everybody needs to protest, because the moment we ignore court orders, we treat them with contempt, then the society is going to break down.
All right. Interesting thoughts. Thank you. Let's stay on that. And this is a special report on page 5 of the Sunday Standard, still touching on the same. It's actually an opinion by the diplomatic community here in Kenya, a number of envoys. Nick Haley, the High Commissioner for the UK, Robert Godek, Ambassador, the US Ambassador to Kenya, Jutta Frasch, the German envoy in Kenya, and about 8 others. And the report is titled, Kenya's Democracy is at a Crossroads, saying that the government and the opposition have taken steps that have undermined Kenya's institutions and driven wedges among its citizens. A father of multi-party democracy has made unsubstantiated claims about elections and unilaterally sworn himself as president in deliberate disregard of the constitution, for which he also proudly fought. And of course, going on to say that today Kenya stands at a fork in the road along its democratic journey. Its leaders need to take the right path for Kenya to succeed. We strongly urge the government to comply fully with the court orders and follow the process in appealing or contesting them. Therefore, it also, the article highlights the closure of the 4 TV stations by the government. I just want to get your quick thoughts on this, Kenya's democracy at a crossroads. Mutinda, do you think this is what is actually happening?
Yeah, I think there is an element of truth in what these ambassadors are saying, because like my opening remarks, I had mentioned that there is concern that people are starting to get excuses as to why they should do things outside of the law. And that is not a trend that we should encourage, because the constitution we have is one of the most participatory. You know, unlike the Lancaster constitution that we had for a very long time, which was actually negotiated in a foreign land, this is a constitution that we all took part in passing. And you remember it was a very elaborate process, because it didn't just, it began in 2005 when we first had the first referendum that majority of the Kenyans voted no. And we again went for an election and now decided to give it another shot, whereby we now decided this is how we want to govern ourselves. If you look at the oaths that all these public service officers are taking, and state officers, one of the key components is fidelity to the Constitution and the rule of law. And it is important that we are true to the oath of office that we take as public and state officers, because if we are true to that, then nobody will try to find an excuse as to why they should go outside of that. So I think it is important that everyone is called to order, and that, like I said, irrespective of how strongly you feel about an issue, then no one is, you know, the supreme document is the Constitution. And you know, Article 1 says that all sovereign power belongs to the people, and that it cannot be exercised in any other way other than as is expressed in the Constitution.
Right.
So we are urging people to sober up from both sides of the political divide and ensure that whatever they do is done within the confines of the law.
Hesbon, in your view, do you think the envoys are right? And if yes, which exit should Kenya take from the crossroads?
I think to a large extent, actually 100%, I agree with them that our democracy is at crossroads, and for 3 simple reasons. One, if you look at the key pillars of a democracy, the media is one of the most important pillars of the democracy. And we have a constitution that provides for a very free and independent media. You know, we have acts of parliament that protect the media. But over the years, you've seen attempts to regulate the media, policy that tends, you know, to protect the interest of the political elites. And therefore, in as much as the media is trying to give information so that the people who elect these leaders have the right information to elect them, there is a way in which the political class has interfered with that. And therefore, whatever democracy our society has some element that is relatively, you know, undemocratic, simply because of that lack of freedom. And then secondly, and I think the most crucial one that they're addressing is the fact that our judicial system and the adherence or fidelity to the rule of law is becoming more and more elusive, especially by the political players. What are they doing? They obey court orders when it suits them. They do things outside the law if they feel that the judicial system does not guarantee them a fair justice system. And then I think thirdly is, you know, our orientation. And this is a big indictment on our democracy, that we play politics of belonging. So even if all these other pillars of democracy were in place, there is a way in which we have to do a lot more, because naturally we are encultured to belong. And therefore we vote along tribal lines, we vote along groupings, and we've not had a leader who has taken us out of this kind of mindset. And what we have right now, and I agree with the envoys, is leadership that needs to sit down and address this. They're not really coming out as condemning the government or the opposition, but they have strong terms against what all the 2 parties are doing outside the precincts of the law.
Wanawakili, which way Kenya as democracy?
You know, rule of law is one of the most important tenets for a democracy. I think we have taken major steps backwards in the last 10 days or so. I can say without a doubt that we are now firmly in the leagues of some very draconian states I would wish not to mention. But the way forward, I think we need a more forceful judiciary. You know, orders, you don't just issue orders. People come to court, you give them time to explain themselves, and you let them go away. Press statements do not cut it when it comes to observing the law and enforcing court orders. We need to call out the CJ. I think the statement was emphatic, but we need a little bit more.
All right.
We need a little bit more from the judiciary.
Dismas?
Well, you know, Benny, it's a tale of two wrongs. You have NASA respecting court orders at their pleasure. So when a High Court in Kitui says there could be something wrong with the people's assemblies, they disregard that. And then you have Jubilee or the government doing the same, disobeying the court orders at their pleasure. So that is unacceptable. We cannot have the courts giving orders, and then you have individuals in Kenya, because of their political capitals, giving them the opportunity to pick and choose. It's as if court orders land on somebody's table, then it goes through the orders. He says, I'm going to respect 1 and 2, I'm going to ignore 3. We cannot allow that to happen. And that's why the buck stops with the same judges who've given those orders and the parties to that case. They must go back and have the people cited for contempt of court. And if it means that people being incarcerated, then that must happen. But now the complicating situation is that the very people who are supposed to enforce court orders, they're the ones who are guilty. Like, for instance, if the court so determines that the Inspector General of Police is supposed to make an arrest, and he fails to arrest a particular PS, like at some stage the court issued orders that then the defense PS, Mr. Torome, needed to be arrested, but the Inspector General failed to make that arrest, then how does the judiciary enforce that? So it gets complicated. But if the state officers respected our constitution, would be in a very good place. But for the envoys, for them, they're not interested really in democracy in any part of the world. They're merely interested in stability. That's why they tiptoe around critical issues. When you look at statements they make all over, whether it's about Kenya, whether it's about Ethiopia, North Korea, their primary interest is stability. But in Kenya, where the rubber meets the road, we know for a fact that President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga need to have a conversation. And they should be able to spell that in black and white. Not again to say that President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga need to meet and set up conditions. But again, what do we need to do to make sure that those two people with very serious political capital meet? This is where we need non-state actors. We need to have strong organizations like the Kenyan Conference of Catholic Churches, religious leaders, to set the ground. But when you look at the scene, everything now, I mean, these people just issue media releases at the comfort of five-star hotels, and then they disappear to the dark. We are looking for a situation where we have somebody like Bishop Alexander Kipsang Muge, somebody like Enjoyer, like Cardinal Tunga, the late Cardinal Tunga, people with voice of reason who can actually look at Raila Odinga in the eye, look at President Kenyatta in the eye and say, Mr. President, you made a mistake. Raila Odinga, you made a mistake. This is the way we need to make progress.
Right.
Now, the religious leaders in Kenya, they're taking positions depending on who's giving them resources, which church you attend. Like, for instance, you remember at around 2007 general elections, there was a crisis in Kenya. And the head of the Catholic Church, Cardinal Njue, never said anything. Even right now, our religious leaders, they tiptoe around issues. Even when you have the president attending service or his deputy or Raila Odinga, and these religious leaders are at the pulpit and they can look at them in the eye and give them a message.
They don't say
They
anything.
tiptoe around issues,
All right.
maybe because they're interested in Sadaka or something. One fails to understand.
Fair enough. Let's leave it there in terms of what's happening in the newspapers. Thank you. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we return, we start taking a look at some of the events that took place this week. Of course, a week that began when a lot of Kenyans were in the dark. The 4 TV stations, the 3 main TV stations among them were still shut. And of course, we'll take a look at the Miguna issue, who was held in police custody for 5 days before being deported, or is it exiled by force back to Canada? Let's take a look at that when we come back.